Hello lovely people, I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I'm here in the book shack, getting a bit chilly in the evenings now. You can tell autumn's setting in. I've got a big pile of books here for the first time for ages, but that's probably because I didn't do a reading wrap up last week, but we're going to do one this week. Now, the neighbours are out, they're very shouty at the moment. I'm hoping you can't hear them over my microphone. I don't quite know where to start here. Let's start with the one that I didn't enjoy so much. And not enjoying it so much is... I don't know whether I enjoy it or not. This is L.J. Ross and this is Belsay. L.J. Ross writes crime fiction. She has sold millions. This is book number 23. She writes about the north of England, and this is a Christmas one. She writes, there's a number of books about DCI Ryan. Now I quite like, I've read a couple before. You always see them in the charity shops. I like crime novels, so I buy them. And the plot's okay. The characters are okay. I'm not sure about the writing. Every so often I come across something that just makes me think that's odd, or that's a strange way of putting things. And it'll go back to the charity shop, I think. I mean, the only reason I'm keeping them at the moment is so I can remember which ones I've read. But they're not bad. They're not bad. I just have... Which other ones have I read? I've read Holy Island. I think I preferred that one to this one. I've read a couple more, but I can't remember. They're not pictured there. But she's sold millions of these. But also she's written millions, and that's not quite millions, but she's written loads, and that sort of makes me wonder. The first one, which was in fact Holy Island, was written in 2015, and I think she self-published. In fact, I think she self-published most of her books. Now, since then, in this book, we've got 23 DCI Ryan mysteries, 6 under the Alexander Gregory thrillers, which I've never read, and 4 on the summer suspense mysteries. And this one was published this year. So that's 33 books in 10 years. I don't know whether that's a good thing. Anyway, I read it. It was okay. Like I say, the plot's quite fun. It's just not a great example of literature. Now, this one I read for Historathon. And this is The Dreadful Judgement by Neil Hanson. It's the true story of the Great Fire of London. And this is really good. And in fact, it reads like a novel. I really enjoyed this. So we're in September 1666, and the plague is prevalent in London again. And it's been an extremely dry summer. And it just takes one little spark. Now, Neil Hanson takes information about fires, how they spread, how they start, and interweaves that with first-hand references of the Fire of London, and the result is a really good book. It's very informative, and it's not at all dry. It's got a few illustrations in there, like, you know, maps and things like that. It's got a good bibliography where he goes through the manuscripts that he uses, and then the books and other papers. I mean, it goes on for pages, but it's really very comprehensive. But it's great. I really enjoyed that. What else have I enjoyed? I enjoyed this. Now, I know it's still got a bookmark in it, but that's because this is the trilogy, and so far I've only read the first one. This is the Earthsea trilogy by Ursula K. Le Guin, and the Wizard of Earthsea is the first story, and this is the story of how Sparrowhawk becomes a wizard. And he realizes, or a witch in his village realizes that he has potential and starts training him, and then his village is attacked, and he saves his village. Even as a young boy, he saves his village by enshrouding the village in this mist so that the attackers can't see it properly. They sort of march all the way through it, up a cliff and off a precipice, or quite a lot of them do, until they realise it's happening. And in the end, they go away and kill someone else. So he is hailed as the saviour of his village. He is then packed off as an apprentice. But after a few months, he decides he wants to go to wizard school. Now, don't worry, this is nothing like the wizard school that you know very well. I loved this. This was featured in Aaron from Aaron Read a Book. It was featured in his top 10 of short sci-fi fantasy books that you might like to read for Shorty September. He was right. It's great. I'd like to read the others. This is classing as one of my 60 before 60 classics. And this was number 55. Now, also, Aaron did a list of other shorty books that you might like to read for Shorty September. And I happen to have one of them, which was Jane and Prudence by Barbara Pym. And this is number 56 on my list of 60 before 60 classics. This was brilliant. Absolutely loved this too. Jane and Prudence met at university. Their lives have taken separate paths. They've remained friends. Jane has married a clergyman, and when we meet her, she is just about to move from the London suburbs out to a countryside parish to be the wife of the vicar. And her daughter moves with them, but she is just about to go up to Oxford, where Jane and Prudence met. Prudence is unmarried despite having many love affairs during her time at Oxford and afterwards. And when they meet for an old girls' reunion at college, no one quite knows what to say about her. She has this job that nobody really knows very much about, working for a writer who is married and a bit indifferent, and she's convinced she's in love with him. She's not married, so, you know, as they're going around the list of the guests at this reunion, so-and-so's working as a scientist, so-and-so's doing this, these people are married to a vicar, and Prudence, nobody quite knows what she's doing. Anyway, Jane decides that she really ought to try and get her married off. So she goes to this new parish with every anticipation of finding someone for Prudence to marry. Comes across a young-ish widower and decides that that's the man for Prudence, so she tries to set them up. In the meantime, Florence, who is Jane's daughter, has fallen for a strange guy who works in the bank and reads the lessons occasionally at church. The young widower is eventually embroiled with somebody else. There's an MP who really quite would like to meet Prudence. Prudence's boss suddenly shows some spark of interest, but Prudence by then is seeing somebody else. It's all very complicated, but it's really good, and it's really good fun. Jane is a chaotic character. I like the interaction between the two of them. It's a good example of people who are very different getting on very well, even though you wouldn't think they would. Altogether, great recommendation, Aaron. Thank you very much. Now, the other books that I have completed are all for Framed in September, an art event. And the first one is this. Now, my lovely friend Alan from Alan's Reads sent me this completely out of the blue because I think I'd mentioned that I liked the work of Toulouse-Lautrec. And we'd been buddy reading a book, and he had taken it down to his little free library and donated it, and in the library he'd found this, and so he sent it to me, which was very kind. I've had it a few months. This is really good. This was published in 1988, I think. It's by Julia Frey, and she has used more than 1,000 family letters from the Toulouse-Lautrec family in creating this biography. It's really readable as well. I like the style of Toulouse-Lautrec's work, especially his posters, but I didn't know very much about him. You know, I knew he'd broken both his legs and was in constant pain. I knew that he was very short because his limbs hadn't grown properly. What I didn't realise was that it's believed to be because of inbreeding. His mother and his father were actually cousins. His grandmothers were sisters. And his father's brother, is this the right way around? His father's brother married his mother's sister, or vice versa. And 3 of their children were born with disabilities, and 1 died very, very young. Yeah, they were all very closely interrelated. It caused them problems. But it does start, The first chapter does start towards the end of his life, but then from the second chapter, you're going almost in chronological order. He spent a miserable childhood, not being able, well, I say miserable. He seemed to have the capacity to enjoy himself, but because of the problems with his physical development, there was no doubt his mental development was absolutely fine, but his physical development, he was packed off to this sanatorium where he was living for about 9 months when he was 11 years old, and his mother is paying all this money to have pretty much nothing medically done for him, and it really didn't improve his health at all. I don't actually know what would have done, but he had such a talent and also a strange attitude. He almost fought against his parents. His parents didn't get on with each other. They tried to control him, both in very different ways, and often he was a cause for their arguments between each other. His mother, because of the disaster of her marriage, he also had a brother who died very young, threw all her attention at him, and she was very religious. They were from an aristocratic family. They had houses all over the place. He was forever being dragged from pillar to post to live in one house and then another house. But his artistic talent showed through, as did his intellectual talent. And when he finally broke out on his own and got himself a studio in Paris, he was attracted to a part of the community that his mother was appalled by. Brothels and entertainment venues that his mother would never have set foot in. And he did make, he did have a successful career, but he also suffered from paranoia and alcoholism, and he indulged himself way too much. He was institutionalized because of his mental health problems, and also he painted his way out of that. He managed to convince the psychiatrists in the sanatorium he was ensconced in that if he could paint a series of saleable pictures, he was obviously of sound mind. It worked. They let him out. But he just such a strange and tortured guy. There's a photograph in here of him defecating on a beach. Now, I have a problem with people defecating on beaches. I have more of a problem with people who are photographed defecating on beaches, because he seems to think it would make a great picture. Very strange, very talented, very tortured. I really enjoyed this book. Thank you, Alan, very much for sending it to me. The other two books, one I've shown you before, and I've read this for Framed in September. I say read it. I did read it. There are words in here. This is the New Yorker album, 1925 to 1950. And it was published in 1951. It was a book that I removed from my father's library. And this features various cartoons that were published in the New Yorker magazine between that time period, and it goes in chronological is the word. It goes in chronological order. So we have the late 20s, then the early 30s, the late 30s, the early 40s, and the late 40s. And obviously we have the war period in here, and Hitler and Mussolini do feature. There are bits in here that I don't understand. There are caricatures of people, and I don't know who they are. There's one here, and this is Vanderbilt. Obviously, I know who Vanderbilt is. There's another one of Salvador Dali, and I know who Salvador Dali is. But there are plenty in here, and I don't know who they are. And I don't know whether that's because I have no idea of that period of time, or I have no idea about American history. There is, however, sporadically you see in here a cartoon about a group of women at a women's meeting. Now, I would say in the UK it would be like the Women's Institute or something. I don't know what you would call it in I don't know whether it's called the Women's Institute in America or something completely different. And like I say, sporadically you get cartoons, and these are by Helen E. It may say Hoffman. Does it have, I don't know whether it has a list of cartoonists in the front. I don't think it has, no. But in this one, we have everybody being addressed by head honcho woman. I love the fact that they're all wearing hats, by the way. And what they're saying, of course, we must draw some sort of distinction between wishing to overthrow the government and not liking the present administration. It's from the late 1920s. Sad, really, isn't it, that 100 years on, nothing much changes. There doesn't appear to be a list of the cartoonists in here, but it was really fun. It was really interesting. Lastly, An Artist's Journey Down the Thames. This is a book by watercolourist and pastel artist John Doyle. He took a year to put together this book, and these paintings, the paintings in here were particularly done for this book. Someone had an idea that he should do this journey from the source of the Thames all the way down to where the Thames goes into the sea. Excuse me. And this is the result. So he starts in the countryside in Oxfordshire, and he spent a year. He bought himself a boat which had a little dinghy with it, and he spent a year painting the Thames. That one is Ashton Keynes, near the source of the Thames. I like the style of his paintings. This one made me laugh. He painted this. He painted it from that view because he wanted to get that bridge in, and he wanted to get in the whole span of the bridge. And there's a bit about how he created the painting on the other side. With this one, he was a bit upset by this area here. There's this great expanse of just green that he had to have in there if he wanted to paint the whole expanse of the bridge. And then he says some sheep came wandering down, and that helped considerably. And he'd spent a couple of mornings, quite early in the morning, doing those. Decided on the third day he would go down much earlier. And so he did, and was treated to these shadows going across this great expanse of flat green, which improved his picture. And it's interesting seeing how an artist works like that. So we go through Oxford, and Abingdon. Oh, he's in Pangbourne, which is an area I know quite well, and Maple Durham. You see, I know a lot of these places, and I really like seeing how they were. This journey was undertaken, I think, in 1988. Yeah, maybe the year before he did it. He goes through Henley. And gets closer to London, places like Marlow. I know that view of Windsor Castle. And there's Eton College and Chapel. Beautiful views, beautiful paintings. And I like to see the areas that I know. And then he goes into London. This place is Sion House. When I was a reporter, my first job as a qualified reporter, after I'd finished my apprenticeship, I used to work in that area of London. It's Brentford and Chiswick. And Sion House was where I used to hide. Bear in mind, people didn't have mobile phones then. It's where I used to hide if I didn't want anyone to find me. I used to think it was a very clever place to hide. It was a beautiful place to hide. There's a heronry there as well. So these are places I know well. Then we get into London. And there's other places that are quite famous. Rotherhithe, I love Rotherhithe. There's a lot of references to literary people in here as well. George Orwell is buried in one of the churches much earlier on in the book. Alexander Pope visited. What's that? Maple Durham. So it's really interesting, really pretty book, and really interesting. Now, what haven't I read? Should we go through what I haven't read? What I should have read and what I haven't read. I am still reading The Angel of History by Rabi Alameddine. There's been a lot of discussion on this in a Voxer group. It's the Pinheiro Project reconvened to read this. I've been avoiding the discussion because I'm only about halfway through and I need to catch up. I also haven't finished this because I got waylaid by Toulouse-Lautrec, and then I picked up those other two art books. I am, as I've said, 56 books down on the 60 Before 60 Classics. I have just over 3 weeks to go. Next week, I will be reading this. This is Hard Rain Falling by Don Carpenter, and it's a Penguin modern classic. It counts. I don't know who else is involved in reading it, but this is one for next week, and then I'll only have 3 left. So I am concentrating on finishing my 60 Before 60 Classics before I do anything else, I think, although I do have to finish those other 2 books that I mentioned. That's it from me. That was longer than I expected, but to be fair, I didn't do one last week. So this is a combined favourite of the week. I'm hard pushed to say, to be honest. I loved this, and I loved the Toulouse-Lautrec book. And they're all quite chunky, so I have done a fair bit of reading. I hope you've had a good week. Let me know what you've been reading, and I shall be back soon. Can't tell you when. A couple of days or so. Should we see if I can do a Tag Tuesday on a Tuesday? Have a lovely week, everybody. Oh, before I go, I want to say happy birthday to my lovely friend Pat. Pat, have a wonderful, wonderful day. You're midway through it at the moment. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. My lovely friend Pat at Book Chat with Pat.